The best way to explain what happened at Homer City Council meeting last night is to go back to the previous meeting on November 25th. Councilperson Lewis issued a warning, and that led to my prediction, which eventually came true. So here is the warning issued by David Lewis on November 25th.
I'm going to put my head on the chopping block. It's getting near Thanksgiving, so I guess I will be the turkey in the room. And I am going to ask Walt to bring back an ordinance or resolution to put the sales tax back on the table for our first meeting in January. If all the groups want what they want or part of it, they're going to need to be here to support it. If they're not here to support it, it won't pass. In the past, we have put our heads on the chopping block and people say, no, we don't want it. Okay, fine. Then we will do, as Barb says, we will just have to cut. You won't have Parks and Rec. You won't have those things, So it's time to either put up or shut up.
Fish or cut bait.
Yeah, there you go. So I had made a prediction on the following Alaska Matters radio program that this was, in fact, by design, the $19,000 they then cut from the budget for the Homer Foundation, and following that, they also took $20,000 stripped out of the Pratt Museum budget. They also funded $35,000 recreation study, a study to determine whether or not we need a recreation program in this community. Hello. What else could we have done with the $35,000? This was my question. But I knew what they were doing with that, in addition to putting $10,000 into the kitty an additional $10,000 into the kitty for the Homer Chamber of Commerce, which does a great job marketing our community, no doubt. Again, as I say in a piece that I've written for the Homer Tribune tomorrow, I'm not even most upset by that extra $10,000 to the Homer Chamber, by the fact that Councilperson Burgess is the one who brought it up and yet didn't disclose that he is the bookkeeper for the Homer Chamber of Commerce. Now, that is a conflict of interest like none other. Doesn't come up as a disclosure item, doesn't come up as a declaration. I'm going to leave that to the mayor to hold him accountable for that. But that's not even what upsets me. What upsets me is that they're buying favor. My opinion, they're buying the votes. They're buying the bodies. They're getting the people whipped into what can only be considered to be a divisive predicament, backing them into a corner saying, we're going to fund you, but by God, you better come out and support non-prepared foods. We're going to cut your budget. Oh, you better come out and speak to it and fill the room with people that are going to demand these services. Now, remember what Councilperson Burgess said too. Homer is filled with people that want lots of things and don't want to pay for them. Here's Ken Kastner with, I think, a beautiful summary of why this is a problem.
We're talking about over $25 million, and a lot of that money just kind of has gone breezing on by, and we don't use any of the how many chemicals we use at the water plant or how many reams of paper we use here as a wedge issue. But we can use the nonprofits as a wedge issue, and we can use the Pratt as a wedge issue, and I really object to it because we're talking about less than 0.25% of the total budget. But do away with it and be done with it, and tomorrow you'll wake up and you won't be any richer, and you'll just have a whole lot of people really, really irritated with you.
Exactly. This is a wedge issue. I've been saying leverage. I liked the way Ken is defining that. It's a wedge issue designed to divide the community such that through smoke and mirrors, you all of a sudden think that, oh, wow, in order to enjoy these benefits over here, that we must come in and support a non-prepared foods tax. Well, did it work?
I'm involved in a variety of organizations and have been and so on, and all of them have benefited from the groups being discussed tonight, the Homer Foundation, Pratt. The needs assessment hasn't happened yet, but the recreational part is, obvious to a lot of things I've been involved with. I just want to say I'm willing to pay my increased sales tax. I'm willing to pay a bed tax. My relatives and friends that come from out of state, I guarantee they won't complain about a bed tax.
All right. Now, here is former Homer Mayor Jim Hornaday.
I think that you should seriously consider putting the full sales tax year round. I think that would be the quickest way to get you some additional needed revenues.
One more sample of how effective this divisive issue and this wedge was as perpetrated upon the people of Homer by the Homer City Council, as orchestrated with the maestro himself, Mr. Walt Reedy. Here is somebody coming to testify with a brand new tax and a brand new revenue stream that nobody was even talking about.
To consider giving another $10,000 to the Chamber, an organization of business owners who their direct interest is to market Homer, and at the same time of the city talking of eliminating funding to the other nonprofits is especially troublesome.
There you go. So she then goes on to talk about how we need to implement a bed tax. So, man, nobody was even talking about a bed tax. All of a sudden, then it became, well, yeah, hey, let's do that. Now, Ken Kastner also spoke later in the meeting about some of the trouble with the budget, and this is just one snippet of that. Go ahead.
The city spends a lot of money on things that I don't agree with. I don't agree with spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on litigation because we don't have a way of settling local disputes locally.
In addition to that, by the way, litigation oftentimes, or at least in the example of the sewage in the homes, brought on by your Homer city manager.
Why does everything have to go to Superior Court? Why do we have to bear that burden? I don't support spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on design and construction of facilities that have no value behind them other than, people think that they're good, but they've never been approved by the citizenry. There's no vetting process, but we're proceeding with a lot of studies and engineering on something that's never really been vetted.
Exactly. Great point, Ken. Now, not only has it not been vetted, it's possibly even something that is ill-conceived from the beginning, such as...
And I think that it's unfortunate for you that the bathrooms with now that have barriers in front of them have become symbolic of that sort of an activity. They weren't wanted, they weren't needed, they're incredibly expensive, and right now they serve no utility. Thank you.
No utility in the idea that they're going to be potentially seasonal. They I don't even believe are going to be open year round. And while I don't take issue with that per se, in other words, if we can eliminate some of the heating costs, the water costs, the electrical and maintenance and cleanup on a year round basis and just keep them seasonal, obviously it's going to be more affordable for us. That's maybe just what we need to look at. But that begs the question, why did we build them? Why did we take this $200,000 per bathroom plus $100,000 to acquire the lot on which the 239 East Pioneer bathroom sits? And so that's $300,000 plus the other two. We're into $500,000 for bathrooms because it's the number one complaint of visitors to our community is that we don't have enough bathrooms. What? And okay, fine, it came from other tax revenue. It didn't come from your flour and sugar and your potatoes and lettuce sales tax. It didn't come from that, so you should just stop whining. That's not leadership. I'm sorry, that is not leadership, and this is proof positive that what I said was absolutely correct. Councilman Lewis, Councilwoman Howard, Councilman Burgess, and I get Francie Roberts. We have to throw Francie into this mix as well as the mayor and the city manager. All were stating on the 25th, you need to show up, people. That those of you that want these extracurricular activities, or those of you that want the nonprofits and the social and the cultural and the art, you better show up and you better speak out. You better support the non-prepared foods sales tax. I was unfortunately right about that, and it proved true here last night. Now, a couple of other people spoke that I thought really hit the nail on the head. One of them is Tom Struzas, and Tom is with the Homer Voice for Business, and he was asked by and on behalf of that group to speak to the council. Here's what he started with.
Revenues have gone up 4% and expenses have gone up 16%. There's running a business that just doesn't work out, and there's obviously something wrong with that picture.
Absolutely, that's not a sustainable model. Tom followed with this.
More jobs will lead to increased sales and services from local merchants, which will increase overall tax revenues. Thank you.
Another member of the Homer Voice for Business is Paul Huper, and Paul, I thought, really hit another nail on the head.
I've got many friends, family that work for the city of Homer, so I hope I don't step on anybody's feet. But right now, our employees are currently getting 7 to 10 weeks of paid leave. They're getting paid birthdays. As a businessman, I can't remember the last time I've gotten a paid birthday. And I think.
Let me back up. When I say hit the nail on the head, I believe what Paul is articulating is a direct result, I should say, of what the council did, and that is divide the community. So all of a sudden, we are all focused on these other issues. It's a $25 million budget, and suddenly we're focused on, hey, wait a minute, why do they get their birthday paid off?
It's just a bad idea. Detroit gives paid birthdays. Personnel increases are up 21%, operating supplies up 69%, electricity up 41%. I can go on and on. This Parks and Rec. Planning and zoning, since 2011, we're up 104% for planning and zoning. Have our building permits, gone up 104% to match that. Audio visuals up 162%, office supplies up 34%, employee training up 79%, legal fees up 29% since 2011. And I can go on and on. I think it's just unsustainable.
It is unsustainable. And as such, you'd ask, well, where will you and Homer get more money? Here's Charles Davis.
My name is Charles Davis. I'm a resident of Homer. I'd like to speak to the ordinance 13-42, which I guess we've redefined the definition of discontinued. Why we did that, I don't know. We haven't helped the people up in the Bayview motels.
Let me stop in for a second. Those of you that are not aware, the Bayview Inn is a long-established business at the entrance to Homer. It's on the Baycrest Hill, established about 1950, 14 years prior to the city of Homer becoming a city. It was, 32 years prior to Homer even having a zoning code, and a good 49 years before Homer actually annexed the land on which this motel is sitting. In other words, it was outside the city limits until 1999, 2000, and then it became inside the city limits, suddenly subject to non-conforming use because it's a residential zone. And so what Charles is saying is that essentially we've done them no good. We've just adopted an ordinance that would allow for non-conforming use to go on to 24 months from 12, but really it needed to be 36 months in order to help the Bayview Inn. So this new ordinance was all for nothing. It was arbitrarily changed from the original intent of 36 months to 24 by Councilman Burgess, approved and recommended by the Advisory Planning Commission, sent back to the council. They've now adopted it as a 24-month. You can have, in other words, a 24-month lapse in use and maintain a non-conforming use status. It does no good for the Bayview Inn. Hence, going forward, the Bayview Inn will not be able to generate revenues, generate sales tax for the city, increased property taxes, jobs, wages, etc., that would have afforded people to pay their bills, spend more money in the community, stay here longer, etc., ad nauseum. We are not taking care of business to bring more business to town. That, I think, was the point that Charles was trying to make. Hey, don't go anywhere. More to come here on Alaska Matters Radio.